This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, here we are, beginning of February. We're bearing down on, by the time this posts, we will already know who the Super Bowl winner was, but as we're recording this on Friday, we're staring down Super Bowl weekend. Definitely going to be a different kind of Super Bowl this year for sure, depending on where you are in the country, but we should all be still observing those social distancing guidelines and not throwing parties and things like that. But looks like the ad race is shaping up to be an interesting one. There should be a lot of good creative ideas on there, and there has been plenty of PRing out there to support all of those creative new ads. Would love to hear your thoughts, even though it's advertising and not public relations, there's still a little PR mixed in there. So would love to hear your ideas and your reactions to what those Super Bowl's ads were, what your favorite one was, why it was your favorite, maybe how it could have been, it was propelled by PR, or maybe it could have been better propelled by PR. Would love to get a conversation going on the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages on the Super Bowl ads that we all saw on Sunday, and it will be in the rearview mirror by the time you are listening to this on Monday morning. Speaking of getting involved in the community, we'd also love to hear, as always, your suggestions on how we can grow this podcast. So we want to encourage you to connect with us there on social media. And again, we have a new conversation every week. That's 52 new guests every year. We'd love for you to be one of them. So if you're interested in being a guest, please send us a message over one of the social media networks. We'll have a chat and we'll see if you are fit for our podcast and you can share some knowledge with our audience. We're always interested in hearing lots of different and interesting opinions. And speaking of different and interesting opinions, as well as really informed opinions, we have a great guest this week, so let's get right into it. You will find Michelle Garrett at the intersection of public relations, content marketing, and social media. As a public relations consultant and a freelance writer, she specializes in working with B2B clients. Michelle was named a top digital PR leader in 2020. Her articles have been featured in Entrepreneur, Reagan's PR Daily, Muckrack, and Freelancers Union, among many others. Michelle, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jody. This is fun.
So full disclosure, this is actually the first time you and I are actually talking to each other. We ran into each other on social media, I think on Twitter, and we share a lot of the same perspectives, both on PR and a lot of other things, which we talked about before the show. So I knew you would be a great guest. No pressure here, but I know this is going to be a great conversation. And I also love it when we mix things up a bit here on the show. For starters, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your business, and how you work with your clients.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It is really a pleasure to be, talking to you as opposed to tweeting with you, although that's fun too. But I have been working for myself for a long time now. And I often work with clients on usually one of three types of projects: writing, media relations, and or social media. So I have a journalism degree and with a PR concentration, and my writing's always kind of been my first love, so that just kind of comes naturally for me. And I know that a lot of clients love media relations. They want to see themselves in the news, and so that's always been a big part of what I do with clients. And then, of course, social media has come into play, and I love it when you can connect, your earned media into your social media, into your content, and kind of make it all work together because it helps. They all help feed each other. So I really enjoy those types of projects.
Do you have any specific verticals that you work in?
Well, my background really screams high tech. I mean, I have been doing technology work since the beginning of my career. I lived in Silicon Valley for 7 years. That's where I started my consulting practice. So I've worked with a lot of startups and big corporations like HP, Adobe, and other tech companies. And then I also have kind of gotten into some manufacturing and industrial type clients. Most of them also have kind of a tech slant, perhaps too, but they're great because they often need a lot of help because they haven't really done as much digital marketing as maybe clients in other industries have. So those are fun to work on too.
Well, that's a great place to start a conversation about sort of how we work with our clients and maybe even how we first interface with those clients when we first come in contact with them. And depending on the client, you probably have found this as well. I'm sure you have. Um, they can have a little bit of experience with PR, they can have a lot of it and they know exactly what they're looking for, or they can have no experience with it and they have no idea what they're looking for. How do you start that first conversation with someone who calls you up or finds you somewhere and says, "Hey, I need a PR person"? Walk us through maybe how you approach that interaction.
Well, I think sometimes, to your point, they think they need PR, but I think one of the first things that we need to talk about when in that situation is, do they really need PR, and are they ready for PR? Do they understand what PR is, how it works? I have been thinking a lot about how the client plays a role in the success of the PR project. So, for example, if they think they're going to hire a PR consultant or freelancer or an agency or any PR help and think it's just like magic and it's just going to, everything's going to be, okay, you're hired, go and, go off and work your magic. It's really, the client needs to be engaged in the process is where I'm going with that. So I am looking now when I talk to clients about, what is their level of engagement going to be? Are their expectations are that, overnight, it's just going to be some magical process, or are they really going to be in it kind of for the longer haul, be a good partner, help, not to say that, you want them to do your job for you, but you do want them to be able to help you with, ideas for stories or trends they might be able to take advantage of, or just what's coming up. They shouldn't keep their PR partner in the dark. They should be very, they should just look at it like, as another piece of their marketing team, another, just another uh, player on the team, and kind of embrace that and be very open and transparent about what they're doing and how that might be of interest to their audiences.
Yeah, I agree. I have a couple approaches to this. One, I will always put a line in the contract that says that basically establishes the relationship. That says, I'm going to do this for you. In turn, you're going to be forthcoming and timely with information that only you know, and
Mhm.
that's going to help drive your business. I'm a big fan of analogies. I think I've already thrown three of them at you in this conversation in the last 15 minutes. But I sometimes say that, I'm the carpenter, you're the forest. You bring me the trees, I'll build you the house. But
Yeah.
I can't build you the house without the trees. I can't build you the house without the lumber. You have the raw information that I need to shape your story. And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to talk with you about it, sort of how you go about it, because I know you work with so many clients that you must have like a tried and true way of how you figure out how you talk to these people to let them know, hey, I'm only as good as you are. I'm
Hmm.
only as good as the information you bring me.
Hmm. I really like that. I might have to start using that line. I like that a lot.
You feel free. Nothing here is copyrighted. This is all for the good of the community. Once you get started with them, though, how do you find most clients in sort of working with them and pulling the information out of them that they need? Do you find that they are generally agreeable to the way you approach it, or what are some of the secrets maybe to getting someone going who doesn't quite get it? Maybe simply because they don't know.
Hmm. Well, sometimes they're busy too, and they think, well, we've hired you to do this work. Now just go do this work. Well, that's great, except, you do need to, again, you just need to work in partnership with each other, I think. And every client is different. So it's interesting to me because you can have you could have two clients engage you for similar work, but each one has a different style, and sometimes, the outcome is different depending on, how well you're working together. And so I think as I have been doing this longer, it's more important than ever to me, not only to find clients that are a good fit, like style wise, but just that are good people, and just understand how to work, be a good partner and work as a team, because I just feel like, um, I don't have time or patience anymore for the clients that just expect you to do it overnight, and if you don't, they are disappointed, or their expectations, they let you know their expectations aren't being met. To me, this is more challenging than ever. This work, not that it was ever like a walk in the park, but I mean, let's look at the news cycle. I mean, it's breaking news 24/7. I think we've seen maybe a little bit of a slowdown on that, but I mean, let's, look at the landscape. You've got COVID, you've got the economy. I mean, there's all kinds of issues going on. And so honestly, even if you're pitching reporters that don't cover those stories necessarily, everyone is kind of overwhelmed and distracted, and it's just more challenging. I just had a situation where I started working with somebody in early December, and even with the holidays, which really were 2 weeks this year, pretty much 2 full weeks, a lot of people took off. And then we went right into January, and look what January was like. I mean, so they were
Who would have thought, right? Usually that's ramp up time.
right.
Got thrown right into the deep end.
Oh my gosh, what a, just it was insane. So, I mean, I think they were disappointed, that there wasn't more traction or more activity. I'm just like, wow, really, like, you have to consider the bigger picture and the whole landscape of, the conditions that you're pitching under. Not to say that you can't get any stories or that you shouldn't be pitching, but I do think you have to be thoughtful. I mean, nobody was ready for, it's almost like, having empathy or sensitivity, or there's something that's missing in some clients or some people. They just don't get it. Like, they don't understand, like, it's not just about my skill pitching your story, it's about a lot of other things. There are other conditions that affect, the outcome, or even just the way it's received, or, I think there's a sensitivity that's required in certain times. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we all know, and not to lament the state of the news industry, fewer people doing more jobs with more scrutiny and higher expectations, and the state of newsrooms in general. I find that I have to pitch reporters, at least on things that are not sort of semi-breaking news or like event-based news, or come to the news conference, that kind of thing.
uh-huh.
Um, I find that I have to pitch feature stories further and further in advance,
Hmm.
just because these reporters have so much on their plate that they, one, have to weed out an awful lot. And a lot of things that they might have said yes or maybe to before, they're having to say no to simply because they don't have the bandwidth.
Yes.
And they also don't have, by the time, or they don't have the time to get around to it, and by the time they'll get around to it, it's just not going to make sense. And so I have to, I almost, yeah, I always put myself in the place of sort of thinking like the editor. I think we all do, right? And
Mhm.
doing that editor's job, doing a little bit of the editor's job for them, and saying, here's the story, here's where it might fit, and here's when you might want to do it.
Mhm.
All those kind of suggestions to the reporter that you're pitching,
Mhm.
but also give it to them far enough in advance that they can. I mean, I've almost doubled the amount of time that I use, give a reporter to pitch a feature story. If I used to pitch it on, let's say, a Monday, and this will be happening later next week, I'm doing it the week before.
Mhm.
Just because, and that's just daily, newspaper pitches.
Mhm.
Just because there's so little bandwidth that these men and women have to do these stories. Do you find it similarly?
Yes, but I've also found that sometimes when everything aligns, it can still happen pretty quickly. I think it's just a matter of, is it a good story? Is there what's backing it up? Do you have data? Do you have, talking points? Do you have what are you giving the reporter that's going to make them say, yes, I need to do this story? I had just had that happen too. I had a client who, wanted a specific story pitched, and it was local media, which, I mean, that can be easier. It just depends. And we knew, like, I knew exactly who I was going to pitch. We got on the phone, talked through it. I wrote it up. They looked it over, and I sent it over, and it was like, bam, immediately. And then the story came out this week already. It was like
Oh,
two
those
or
are
three
great.
weeks in all. So, I mean, that was a big win, but it doesn't always work that way. And, I just, I don't know. I think, we've just gotten into, a more challenging time, and I just try to set expectations
Yeah.
accordingly. So,
And the immediacy that we've all become used to because of social media doesn't help. In social media and other digital platforms, you can literally write something, push a button, and it's live to the world. And I think people forget that in the earned media business, newspaper, radio, TV, what have you, there
mhm,
is a process. And even the reporter is not the final word. The reporter's got to synthesize the information, bring it back to their editor, and the editor's got to,
mhm.
sometimes they have to have a meeting, or they have to sit down and think
Yeah.
about it, or it is takes time.
Mhm.
Like you said, unless it's so immediate and almost like, whether it's breaking or whether it's really hooked to a moment in time, like, okay, this is happening on Wednesday, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
These things really do take time.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to remember too, that even after a story, even after a reporter talks to your client and, writes the story, sometimes it can be killed. I've had, interviews either pushed out, and occasionally just kind of like, they just kind of die before they can get out there because,
Right.
it's not a timely story anymore. Or maybe
Right.
they'll come back later and do something else. But um, the other thing I was thinking about was that, I think the way I used to pitch was in order to try to get a reporter to conduct an interview with the client. Whereas now I just saw somebody writing and talking about how you really need to have everything they need in the pitch. So it's not like you're counting on them to do an interview because they may not be able to do it. So the easier you make it for them, the better it really is.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well, where they almost want to sort of rewrite the information that you give them.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking anybody. That's just the nature of
No.
what they do. And I'm sure that they're just so overburdened with the amount of content they need to create for their own publication that they're just relying on us to provide it to them.
Yeah, so that's kind of something I've been thinking about as far as adjusting, because I usually, I'm thinking, oh yeah, well, if they're interested, they'll want to talk with the client. Well, that may not necessarily be how it works out. So, and again, back to press releases, because I had a journalist ask me, do you have a press release? And I think it's so funny because I know a lot of PR folks and some journalists too would say, "Oh, I never look at press releases." But honestly, I occasionally I they ask for them. So then it's like, well, do you write one every single time? Because I usually say, no, you don't write one every time. But now I'm starting to wonder, like, do I need to just kind of even just kind of create one that we're maybe not going to do anything else with, but just like so it's in the format the reporter needs the information in, or is expecting that to be in that format. I don't know.
Yeah, I sometimes write a press release just to help the client think through it,
Yep.
and to get all the terms and the language down.
Yep.
Because it's the easiest thing to do is just to crank out a press release for people who write them all day long,
Yeah.
like us. So you do it, it forces you to think about the information and get it down. And then you
Yeah.
can take it and you can create the pitch, you can create the byline, you can do all the other things you want to do because you've got the core document.
Yeah,
And
and
then
I
if you
think
ever need it, you got it.
yeah, everybody can refer back to it. It helps get everybody on the same page with
Yeah.
messaging. I mean, I love press releases. I couldn't remember what your position on them was if you and I
Yeah.
had that exchange on Twitter, because some people will
You know,
push back.
I've gone back and forth. I thought they died out about 7 or 10 years ago, but I think they're very back. Again, and just the way I described them, not that they're, I think a lot of reporters ignore press releases too, but for maybe the headline, the subject line, the headline, and maybe the first paragraph. It's like, is this something I want or not?
Yeah.
And it is an easy and digestible way to convey information, but I find it to be an even better exercise to go through with the client because it forces the client to think that way.
Yes, but some people would poo-poo it and say, "No, that's ridiculous." So I've had people tell me that too. But to me,
Yeah.
I like that process. I agree with you. It does more than just, it serves as more than just a a press release to pitch to a reporter. I think there's more to it than that. So
Something I know you wanted to talk about, and this is a terrific topic, so I'm going to hand this over to you and let you take this and
oh
run.
dear.
Newsjacking, sort of
Oh,
how what this term is, and
oh.
how it can be used for good. Go right ahead, because I find this a fascinating topic.
Well, I write pretty much a monthly column for Muck Rack, and I've been doing that for a long time now, and I love it. They're great to work with. And one of the things I wrote about last year, well, it's been just over a year ago, or maybe, I mean, anyway, the point was Kobe Bryant. Okay, so the Kobe Bryant tragedy happened. It was on a Sunday. Of course, I remember, I was at home and I saw the news and I turned on the TV and I was like, whoa, what's going on? The very next morning, Monday morning, in my inbox are pitches from, because I'm in a database of journalists now, because I do sometimes have byline articles. So I got pitches trying to capitalize on this tragic event, and I was just like totally like just dumbfounded by it. Like, who, again, back to the empathy, it's like, who would do this? Like, I know that you have clients breathing down your neck to get coverage and so forth, but I mean, who in the world would think that that was appropriate? But more than one person had that experience. So I wrote about it for Muck Rack. And then my editor at Muck Rack just asked me to kind of revisit that topic again, because right after January 6th, then the insurrection, here we go, very next day, right in my inbox. I'm like, really? What do people not get this? Like, it just, I don't even know what to say. It's a head shaker for me.
Yeah, for sure. And it's akin to dancing on graves. And I remember a long time ago, I was doing public relations for a college, and there was a horrible dormitory fire at a sister college in the area. And it was due to, or partly due to, a lack of sprinklers in the dormitory building. And there was
No.
this thread that, if they had had sprinklers, the kids would have had more time to get out, and several of them died. It was a horribly tragic story. And a local TV reporter knew that the college that I was working for had just built dormitories and had sprinkler, and called me up and said, "Do you have sprinklers?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we built them 6 months ago." Of course, they have sprinklers, and the ones that the tragedy happened at were very old buildings, and they weren't building code. So he said, "Well, can we come over and talk about this?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." No way. We're not going to dance on the graves of those kids who just died in a dormitory fire to say, "Look, guys, here's how you're supposed to do it." No way.
Yeah.
Um, and I got a little static from the people at the university at the time, but I stuck to my guns, and we eventually stayed with that decision, and I'm glad we did, because it's ghoulish to
Yeah,
do stuff like that.
it's just not even worth it. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Okay, so what if I said, yes, I'll do your story? That makes you look bad, me look bad, the client look, I mean, it's like, I just don't, I mean, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. Now I'm not saying now, and then in the story that'll be out, I think on Monday, the news story, gave an example of, a good example of newsjacking, because it can be a very effective tactic. David Meerman Scott coined the term years ago, wrote a book about it. And I mean, but anyway, it's not that it's always bad, but you do really have to use some sensitivity, empathy, whatever you want to call it. Some people must be missing that gene, or are just under so much pressure to get coverage. They're just desperate and will glom onto anything, and that's not a good look.
Well, and it's a great segue into another topic that I know you and I wanted to talk about, which is ethics in PR.
Yeah.
And this came off of an email I think that you got, and I
Yeah.
read it, and I was horrified as well, similarly. And this specific email was about, how to win a client, and it was the email was one company dumping on a peer company, in an
Yes.
effort to get clients. I guess that's the simplest way to explain
Yes.
it. But let's talk about ethics in PR a bit. Obviously, I'm sure you espouse the same ideas. You got to have ethics, but let's get into that a little bit,
Yeah.
about ethics in PR. How we go about doing our jobs?
I laugh because I just had a situation where I think my ethics just came to the forefront. I'm like, I can do a lot of things, but there's certain things I just can't do. Um, and so, I mean, I don't like these paid opportunities that try to masquerade as earned media
Mm.
opportunities. And I'm seeing so much of that. And lo and behold, I had been working with a client who had signed up for not one, but a couple of these types of things, and then wanted to turn
No.
it over to me. Okay, you manage this, and I'm like, you know what? I rail against these things. Like, obviously, they don't follow me on Twitter because I'm talking about these things all the time. It's like, there's PR people who try to sell, media coverage. There are companies that try to sell awards. I'm going to call out, Forbes. A lot of that stuff is paid. I mean, I'm not
Hmm.
saying never ever do it, but I mean, I don't know if people understand what this does to your credibility when you are trying to, when you're paying for these earned media opportunities, these awards and things. It leaves a very bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, and in my experience, that those kind of have a stink on them. You kind of know them when you see them. Like, that's not a real award. That's, you paid for that,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It doesn't feel right. And maybe I'm just hypersensitive to it.
I think it has the opposite effect of, like, I think people buy the award because they think it's going to add credibility to
Right,
the,
right.
but I think it actually does the opposite. And I mean, maybe there are people who don't think that way or don't understand or view it in a different way, and that's fine, I suppose. But when I work with a client, I would tell them to run away. And sometimes my clients will get those emails directly and they'll send them to me and be like, is this something we'd want to do? And I'd be like, no, no, no. But there are a lot of companies who don't have a PR counselor, who don't have somebody to kind of help them make those calls. And I mean, those people are, they're subject to, being taken advantage of. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So last question here in the conversation, and then we'll get into our rapid fire questions. Where do you think PR is going these days? I mean, it's gone through so many gyrations, I think, even in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. What's
Mhm.
the future of our industry here?
Well, I mean, I think we're in a good place because transparency and truth matter more than ever. And I feel like that is something that PR pros can help their clients with. I know that some PR people have a reputation as spin doctors or party planners or whatever, but I really think there are a lot of us who take what we do very seriously and view that as a very important part of what we can help clients do is be truthful. If they do make a mistake, which that can happen, or somebody can perceive that you made a mistake and post on social media and it blows up, right? So if that happens, I think it's just important to, turn to your PR counselor for advice and just try to, get out there in front of it a little bit. If you made a mistake, own it, apologize, tell people what you're going to do to avoid doing it again, and maybe make up for your mistake. I think it's an opportunity for PR to kind of take a bigger role in helping companies with their reputation and yeah.
Great advice, and a great place to end. So now we get into the fun section of our show at the very end here, where we steal a page from the inside the actor's studio and
Nope.
ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions. So these are meant to elicit just those one or two word answers and maybe a little laugh, right? So with your indulgence, here we go.
Okay.
Rapid fire question number one: your favorite news source?
Oh, NPR.
Nice, nice. I listen to it every morning. Favorite social media platform?
I think you know the answer to that, Jody. It's Twitter.
I do love it. I think it's terrific. Rapid fire question number three: coffee or alcohol?
That's a tough one, right? I drink a lot more coffee than alcohol, but tonight I will be definitely having some wine.
There
So,
you go. Sounds good. Rapid fire question number 4. Your favorite on the run food?
ooh, gosh, I don't get to run very much because I'm stuck at home, right? But when I am on the run, I think Kind bars are something I keep in my bag. So,
That is a good one. Yeah, I like those too. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
oh wow, that's a good one. I've kind of always wanted to go and study law, but I mean, I don't know that I will actually do that. But anyway, it's a long story, but yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Michelle, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Well, I mean, obviously Twitter. So I'm at PR is us. That's PRISUS, just like it sounds. I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a business Facebook page. And what else? Oh, my website is just michellegarrett.com. I have a free monthly newsletter. I do not spam people with a bunch of email, but they are welcome to sign up for that if they like. And I frequently blog on there as well, and I contribute articles to several publications, including Muck Rack. So,
Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and online at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.